I'm Thelma Wade, 26 years old. At a family dinner last week, my world completely collapsed. From childhood to adulthood, I was the invisible person beside my sister. My parents almost never looked at me. She is the radiant and never make mistakes. Her parents are always full of praise for her and give her everything she asks for. However, I am just a dispensable existence. But that night, they went too far. It was a Saturday, and we were sitting around the table, the air as ever. My mother smiled sweetly and greasy and said to me, "Dear, your sister needs your room to be a live studio. It's time to hand it over." The fork in my hand froze in midair, the sanctuary of my childhood, my only safe space, and it was about to leave me. Before I could respond, my father slapped the table and his face turned red. "Either agree or get out of this house," he roared. The room fell silent for an instant, and my sister proudly leaned back on the back of her chair, as if she had won. My brother fidgeted and deliberately avoided my eyes. I could have argued, I could have countered, counting every moment they ignored me, every moment they chose her over me. But I didn't. Instead, he smiled slowly and meaningfully, a smile that made Mom narrow her eyes and Dad tighten his jaw. They didn't know what was going to happen and thought they could push me around like before. But I was prepared for something that would completely overturn their world, and it was only a matter of time before they found out the truth. What would you do if you were in my situation? Keep silent, fight back, or smile like me? Please leave a message below to tell me your choice. I want to know which road you will take. I grew up in Richmond and always lived in the shadow of my sister Tanya. Parents are eager to become famous Tanya. Dance classes, spotlights, and other resources are never in short supply. He also spoiled his younger brother Ronald in every possible way, and new toys and snacks never stop. I am the only one who is seen as a transparent person who sits quietly and alone at family gatherings. I prefer books such as mathematics and economics that require logic, and the room is the only shelter where I can pursue my dreams at ease. Since I was 13 years old, I worked in a grocery store on weekends to save money and wanted to buy a computer to learn finance, but when I was 15 years old, my parents pried open my money box and took all my savings to Tanya to buy a live camera, only to say lightly, "For your sister's future." This incident ignited my fighting spirit, determined to prove my worth on my own and stop begging for their approval. The more my family preferred my siblings, the more I studied financial knowledge, and mathematics became my refuge and way of resistance. I self-study courses, bubble library. The results are always top-notch. At a family barbecue, my neighbor asked me about my ambitions, but my mother was the first to mock me for knowing only fiddling with boring numbers. Tanya also scoffed. This contempt made me more determined to do something they can't ignore in this room that is looked down upon by my family. Several times, I doubted myself. One night, Tanya bragged that she had won a brand endorsement, and my mother applauded her like she had won an Oscar. I felt a moment of insignificance. I sat in my room, looking at my client files, wondering if I could never be seen. Just then, my friend from college, Phyllis Coleman, appeared. We met in economics class and forged a friendship because of our common love of numbers. She came to my house as a guest and saw how worried I was and said, "Thelma, you are doing something very meaningful. They don't understand, but you're changing someone else's life." Her words woke me up and reminded me of my first heart. It was the only time I needed such encouragement, and Phyllis just happened to show up and support me without reservation. I moved on, signing up more important clients, local doctors, small tech startups, while always keeping a low profile. My parents think that I am very poor and may just be doing an office job with no future. What they don't know is that I've already paid off my student loans, saved a lot of money, and is already planning my next move. This room with creaking floors and faded wallpaper is my headquarters. It proves that without their approval, I can still succeed. I'm ready for anything, even if they're not ready. Last Saturday, I sat at the family dinner table, completely unaware that everything was about to change. The air was filled with the usual chatter, the clatter of plates, and we passed mashed potatoes and roast chicken to each other. Mom has always been the leader of this kind of party, and her eyes indicate that there will be heavy news to announce. Dad sat in the main seat at the table, stiff, ready to support her. Tanya is playing with his phone and maybe looking at the latest fan count. Ronald, on the other hand, fiddled with the food and his normally carefree smile disappeared. I took a deep breath, hoping that this time we could have a quiet meal without any argument. But I was wrong. Halfway through the meal, my mother put down her fork and gave a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Dear," she looked straight at me. "We discussed it. Your sister needs your room to be a live studio. It's time to let go." My heart sank. This room wasn't just a space for me. It was my refuge where I dreamed, studied, and started my own company. There are sketches of my childhood on the walls, bookshelves full of books that shaped my growth, and my desk is the starting point of this million-dollar company. Giving it up for Tanya's live broadcast is like erasing my very existence. I opened my mouth to protest, but before I could say a word, Dad's fist fell on the table and the glasses shook. "This is not negotiable," he growled. "Either agree to give up the room, or leave this house. You are not welcome here." His voice was sharp and decisive, like a judge knocking down a gavel. There was a dead silence in the room. Ronald's fork stopped in midair, his eyes dodging back and forth between us. Tanya leaned back in his chair, a smug smile spreading across his face, as if he had won some grand prize. "Come on," she taunted. "Your boring financial job doesn't need a whole room at all. Isn't it just filing? It's not really making a lot of money." Her words hurt, but I'm used to them. Tanya always thought my work was ridiculous, not worth mentioning compared to her glamorous live broadcasting career. She would brag about her brand endorsements and thousands of fans, while her parents would nod her like a superstar. My job that helps people build wealth and turn their dreams into reality is worthless in their eyes. They don't know that I started a million-dollar company, and I never told them. I don't need their applause, but losing my room for Tanya's vanity, my spiritual pillar, is the bottom line I can't tolerate. I looked around the table, their faces mixed with anticipation and indifference. My mother smiled tightly, waiting for my obedience. My father glared, provoking me to dare not resist. Tanya's pride was almost a provocation, and her mobile phone was now on the table, enjoying the moment to the fullest. Ronald, on the other hand, moved in his seat, clenched his teeth, as if he wanted to say something, but could not find the right words. He didn't go along with them, but he didn't defend me either, just stuck in this tense atmosphere. I could have fought back. I could have counted every sacrifice, every income, every customer I had helped. I could have told them that my boring job had already surpassed Tanya's fleeting fame. But I didn't. On the contrary, I leaned back in my chair and took a sip of water slowly, revealing a calm and meaningful smile, a smile that made my mother frown and my father narrow his eyes. Tanya's smile froze for an instant, as if he sensed something was wrong. Ronald looked at me, his expression elusive. They thought I would break down, I would beg, I would give in as before, but I was no longer that child. The silence spread heavy and embarrassed, and the mother cleared her throat, trying to regain control of the situation. "It's all for the family," her voice softened, as if to coax a child. "Your sister's career is taking off, and she needs space to shine." Dad snorted in agreement and folded his arms across his chest. Tanya tossed her hair and added, "You didn't do anything important in there anyway." I continued to smile, letting their words drift from my ears. This room means a lot to me. It's the place where I reinvent myself, the place where I don't need words, silently, to prove them wrong. They thought they could take it away, but they had no idea how capable I was. I pushed open the plate, still smiling. "Let's finish our meal first." My voice is calm and firm. Mom paused, obviously not expecting me to respond like this. Dad's scowl deepened and seemed eager to stir up an argument, but I wouldn't do what he wanted. Tanya rolled his eyes and picked up his phone again, dismissing me. Ronald just stared at his plate, his fingers tapping nervously on the table. They don't know that I have already made my choice. I won't argue. I won't beg. I have a plan that will turn their world upside down, and I'm ready to act on it. The day after that bad dinner, the planet started. Over the years, I have made a huge fortune from my consulting company income, but I have kept a low profile and lived a simple life in my parents' home. The act of asking me to give up my room, my shelter, lit the fuse. I'm not going to leave in silence. I'm going to make a statement. I called Ellen Fisher, the real estate agent I've been secretly contacting for months and has been looking for a property for me. Ellen, I said, I want the house across the street, and I want the deal now. Without hesitation, she replied, It's yours. At the other end of the phone, her voice was full of excitement. By Friday, all the paperwork had been processed, the money had been transferred, and I had the deed to the house, a house that was proof of what my family never believed I could achieve. On Sunday, I invited them over for coffee, not my new home, but their house, for the usual family reunion. They thought it was just another chance to push me out of the room. My mother greeted me with her usual fake smile. Have you considered what we said? Dad snorted, already impatient. Tanya lay lazily on the sofa playing with his mobile phone, while Ronald sat quietly, glancing at me from time to time, as if he had sensed something. I took a sip of coffee, put down my cup and said, I've made my decision. I'm going to move out and live in a house across the street. They were all stunned. Mom's smile disappeared in an instant, replaced by confused eyes. Dad's coffee cup stopped in midair, delayed not to the mouth. Tanya's phone slipped from his hand and fell to the ground with a bang. Ronald leaned forward, his brow furrowed, as if struggling to digest the news. Across the street? What do you mean? Dad finally reacted and asked harshly, his tone full of disbelief. I took out the title deed, put it on the table, and pushed it over. I bought it and paid for it in full cash. Before they could slow down, I continued, By the way, the boring financial job you have been laughing at is actually not a job, but my company. I have been running a personal financial consulting company for several years and have a market value of millions of dollars. There was a dead silence in the room, a dead silence that seemed to freeze even the air. Mom's eyes widened, staring at the title deed as if it were a scam. Dad's face turned red, his mouth closed, but he couldn't say a word. Tanya was completely speechless this time, and his usual smug smile disappeared without a trace. Ronald just stared at me, his expression gradually changing from shock to a more complex emotion, like an epiphany. Just then, Ellen's call happened to come in, as if arrangements had been made. I pressed the speakerphone button, and her cheerful voice came. Congratulations, Thelma. The house officially belongs to you. This is one of the fastest cash transactions I have ever seen. I thanked her and hung up the phone, allowing the news to slowly ferment in their hearts. The disbelief of the family is beyond words. Mom was the first to break the silence and stammered, How? How is that possible? How can you afford it? Dad also leaned forward and asked eagerly, Where did the money come from? You've been living here, and you're clearly living in a tight spot. Tanya finally regained a little momentum, but with a hint of trembling. Millions? Come on, you're making up a story. But her voice betrayed her suspicions. My face does not change color. Believe it or not. My tone was calm but firm. I started a company to help people manage their wealth, with clients all over Richmond, doctors, business owners, retirees. I don't need to show this off. I stood up and picked up the deed. I'm moving out, but not too far. You see me across the street every day. Hearing this, their attitude took a 180-degree turn, and the previous indifference and rebuke instantly turned into flattering flattery. My mother grabbed my hand. Her eyes were red and her voice choked. My good daughter, my mother used to be confused. I didn't see you so promising. Let's discuss the room. You can stay as long as you want. Dad also immediately put away his anger, rubbing his hands and smiling all over his face. Yes, Thelma, Dad has long thought that you are material for great things because we didn't care enough about you before. Tanya even rolled and crawled over and took my arm. The previous ridicule turned into sweet flattery. Sister, I used to play with you. Your company is so powerful. Can you take me with you? I live to help you promote. We'll certainly help you attract more customers. Their tone and manner were full of naked calculations, and their eyes were no longer slighted by half a minute ago. Ronald was still silent, but his face was red, and he bowed his head and clenched his fists, his guilt overflowing. I pulled back my hand coldly and shook my head. This has nothing to do with you. I'm fed up with being invisible. moving to my own house and not providing financial support to anyone. Mom's smile froze on her face for an instant, and Dad's face sank. Tanya's eyes flashed a trace of resentment, but he did not dare to attack. Ronald, on the other hand, nodded gently, as if he had completely understood my determination. I turned away, leaving them silent in shock and panic, walking across the street to my new home. The bags were already packed, my books, my desk, my life, ready to leave that neglected home. A few weeks later, I stood on the front porch of my new home, looking across the street at my parents' house and witnessing their world fall apart. I've settled down in my new home, a house that belongs entirely to me. Every morning, I walk out the door, wave to the opposite side, and start my day. This simple gesture, a casual wave of the hand, seemed to become their nightmare, a silent reminder of how they had despised me for years. It all started with Tanya. Her live broadcasting career, once a stepping stone to her, was ultimately destroyed by her own choice. She's hooked on online gambling, lured by fancy gambling apps that promise to get rich quick. At the beginning, she deliberately concealed it and continued to publish glamorous videos to maintain her image, but the debt accumulated, reaching hundreds of thousands of dollars, far exceeding her sponsorship income. Then the scandal erupted. A rival anchor exposed her gambling vices, leaking her betting records and debt screenshots. The internet instantly criticized her. Overnight, her fans were lost in large numbers, sponsors were rescinded, and her carefully crafted image completely collapsed. She would sit on her parents' porch, staring at her phone, looking pale, watching her dreams go up in smoke. Eager to save their star daughter, the parents made an extreme decision. Dad had always been used to cleaning up Tanya's mess, and Mom couldn't give up her pride. They put up for sale the house where I grew up. The house sold quickly, but the sale price is not enough to pay off all the debt. They pieced together all their savings and paid off Tanya's arrears, leaving only enough money to rent a cramped apartment on the outskirts of Richmond. I sometimes drive past it and see what used to be a home empty, with a sold sign in the yard. In order to make up for Tanya's mistakes, they sacrificed their stable life. Now, they have to start from scratch and live in a small place where they can't even fit the furniture. Ronald is different. He had always been the little darling of the family, surrounded by toys and attention, but he changed after I revealed his success. One night, he came to my door. The usual arrogant smile disappeared. "I'm sorry," he whispered, his voice almost choking. "I never realized we were so unfair to you." He admitted that he had been ignoring his parents' preference for Tanya and their disregard for my achievements. Tanya was deeply touched to see his house sold and his career destroyed, while I was living a successful life across the street. He says he no longer wants to splurge and indulge in designer clothes and parties. "I'm going to community college," his eyes firmly told me. "I want to learn engineering and make my own day." I nodded, not forgiving him immediately, but respecting his change. He walked away, as if he was finally ready to grow. Every morning, I would walk to the front porch with my coffee and wave to my parents' house, a habit I still maintained even after they moved away, silently returning those neglected years. Sometimes I would see Tanya go to their new apartment, head down, no longer have the luster of the old net red. My parents would call me and leave a message saying they wanted to get together and talk about family harmony, but I always kept my distance from them. Their sudden attention seemed so hollow that it only related to my bank account, not real guilt. I'm not mean, I'll take their calls and be polite, but I won't be their ATM. They made their choice and now have to live with the consequences. At the same time, I am very comfortable in my new home. Phyllis helped me throw a housewarming party. This time, she's not here to give me emotional support, just to help with the chores, picking out the decorations, arranging the guest list. We invited my clients, neighbors, and a few old classmates to fill our new home with laughter and music. Phyllis is busy, setting the table and teasing me about my picky taste in wine. "You're really living your dream now," she said with a smile as she laid out the appetizer tray. "This party is not just about celebrating the new house. I want to celebrate what I have achieved through my own efforts." As the weeks passed, I watched my family's life unravel. Tanya took a job at a local mall, and his live streaming career was completely over, and his former self-confidence was replaced by a silent obedience. My parents gradually adapted to the new life, and when I was mentioned, the tone was full of resentment. They would come to my house sometimes and stand awkwardly on the front porch, asking vaguely about my business. "You are really good now," Mother would say, smile very reluctantly. Dad nodded and added, "We're proud of you." But these words sound like after-the-fact remedies, without sincerity. I would thank them, have a quick chat, and then send them away. They can't want to rewrite the past just because I succeeded. Ronald was the only one who really changed. He would send me messages, tell me about my progress, and share small achievements, such as passing a math test or finding a part-time job. "I'm trying to get better." He wrote this once, and I believe him. He's not perfect, but he's trying, and that's already better than the others. I would reply to words of encouragement and leave a door open for him, but not open my heart and let them come back into my life easily unless they made a real effort to earn my trust. Standing on the front porch, watching my former home now live in a new family, I felt a complex emotion, calm and firm. I not only proved myself to them, but also proved my worth to myself. Their decline is not my fault, but the result of their own choices, and I continue to build my future. I built a life of my own in Richmond, free from the shadow of family expectations. After seeing that Ronald was really trying to change, I decided to give him a hand transfer him to community college tuition. He will send me a message to say thank you. I am very happy to see him growing. But I drew clear boundaries for Tanya, Dad, and Mom. I no longer answered their calls, and their attempts to re-establish contact were ignored by me. I am not here to make up for their mistakes, nor to comfort their remorse. They ignored me for so many years, and I chose to look forward, not as wonderful as their life. Last Saturday, I invited Phyllis and a group of friends to our new home for a party. The living room was full of laughter, and the kitchen was filled with the aroma of homemade food. Phyllis has always been the soul of the party. She raised her glass and toast to my journey. To Selma, she started from scratch and created her own glory. Friends applauded in support, a stark contrast to the family I had fled from. We danced, shared stories, and planned for the future, and this house was no longer just a building, but a symbol of my independence. Looking back, I understand a truth. Self-reliance is my greatest strength. The family's preference for Tanya eventually led to their financial bankruptcy and social collapse, a bitter lesson from prejudice. I realized that my value is not in their approval, but in the effort I put in, the life I changed, and the home I built. You don't need the approval of your family to shine. What you need is your own determination. Thank you for listening to my story. If you've ever felt neglected and undervalued, I hope my experience inspires you to keep going. Share your experiences in the comment section, and I'm curious to know how you've overcome the dilemma of being overlooked. Your story is just as important as mine. Subscribe to my channel and let's continue this conversation.